Hey everybody, so my goal today is to try and prep some fossils. I'm hoping that my audio is dropping as it's supposed to, as I'm talking over it. I will be doing a quick test check of this and then I'll be getting going with the stream. Cool, so just did a check, that seems to be working properly. It's been a while since I've done a stream and I've only done a couple of them, so bear with the technical challenges. Drop me a message in chat if you see something going funny or you stop being able to hear me or anything like that, because there's a very high chance there will be some joys. So over the next little bit, my goal is to quickly see if I can tidy this one off. This is the ammonite I found at Port Mulgrave, or one of the ammonites I found at Port Mulgrave, I believe, splitting one of the rocks down, and then when I've done that I will have a look at trying to do this ammonite, which is a Perinoceros, and you can tell it's a Perinoceros because you can see all these little bumps on the outside edge, which the Dactylioceros species from Yorkshire, this one on this side, doesn't have. So you see that these ribs don't have any bumps on them. I appreciate the glare is not ideal for it, but as you can see it's a fairly smooth set with just the ribs, versus the Perinoceros, which has these bumps. So that's the two species I'm going to have a look at today. No idea how far I'll get into the Perinoceros. It will be a bit more challenging to prep, but I'm hoping to at least be able to clear off this overtop and get down into it. This one I should get all the way done. So that's what my goal is for today. Do feel free to drop me messages, I can see them as I'm going. But I'm going to keep muting myself and you'll just have to deal with the quiet music or the chilled music that plays in the background, because that's what I'm listening to as I'm playing with my fossils. For those who want to know how I'm prepping, I got a Dremmel engraver, Dremmel 290, basically this tip from Zoic. It will just oscillate back and forth, and this is what removes the matrix. Anything else beyond that you don't particularly need. We will run into some problems if any of this matrix is particularly filled with iron pyrite, because the Dremel just isn't strong enough to clear that off very easily. So the top preparators in Yorkshire will have air scribes, as you might have seen on some of the other channels, particularly things like Mam Lambo, who has a nice air scribe. But that's what I'm going to aim to do. So that is my goal for the next little bit, and I will catch up with you guys in a little bit. So for those of you just joining and just wondering what's going on, just slowly removing some of the matrix from this. It's a little fiddly at the minute because it's the fine work to get rid of the center, but it's going okay. We'll keep going. So, somewhat annoyingly, the middle's gone by the looks of it. I can't see it following it around. So, to give you an idea of what I'm looking at, so it's a bit dusty. But if you follow this outer edge around, it should continue to get smaller and smaller inside. I'd expect it to be here at about this level all the way around and keep going in. It is not in the middle, so sadly the middle of this one's gone. So I'm going to put that one aside then. As an unfortunate bust. I'm then going to switch out the tips to go onto the chisel tip, and then with the chisel tip we're going to then have a go at this Paranoceros and hope that that's in better shape. And so just trying to sort through all my Zoic tips. Yep, there we go. And if you ever are planning to buy or thinking of buying the Dremmel 290 for it, I will just warn you that even with the nice Zoic tips, sometimes it gets a bit fiddly trying to get this in place because it has a bad habit of popping off the tips when you're running. So you may see this happening in the next few minutes as I start prepping with this chisel tip. The tip may come out even though I've tightened that to a level that I can pull on it and it won't come out. But during the prep, that screw there sometimes loosens, so just be aware of it when you're prepping your cells with the 290, that this sometimes comes loose and the tip will come out. So just be careful if that happens. You just stop and screw it back in. Also, do take my apologies, sometimes I will wander whilst I'm looking for the best light to be looking at things. I will wander up towards the top of the screen, so things go a bit, as you see, go a bit bright, a bit blurry. Bear with me, I've got a new camera on the way, a 4K one, which hopefully should be better with the light conditions, so that should be coming in the next week or so. So do bear with me as my setup improves, so should the stream and the video quality. So surprisingly for the Yorkshire material, this is incredibly soft on the top. This is feeling a bit like a mudstone with how easily the Dremmel's getting through it. For a lot of the Yorkshire material, the Dremel does not go through it quickly. And so the fact that I'm cruising through this makes me a little concerned that the middle might not be there. When we have the soft material on the inside, it tends to mean that it's shale preserved, or it's described as shale preserved. And what happens with ammonites, they have a lot of individual chambers that as the animal grows, it kind of advances itself around these chambers. But the chambers behind it remain filled with air or fluid. It's how it controls its buoyancy. But when it comes to fossilization, that if the air-filled chambers are not in a nodule, so a lot of the other things come in nodules, which is why, for example, this one has this giant lump of rock on the back. This was in a nodule. That if they're not preserved in a nodule, that those chambers filled with air tend to get squished and compressed, and so what you end up having is an ammonite that usually the outer edge is only there and the middle tends to be blown apart. But that's my concern because of how soft this is. But I might be wrong. It might just mean it's a joy to prep. So I'm going to keep prepping it. Hey again, I'm just keeping an eye on my YouTube things and seeing numbers going up and down as people come and leave, so just thought I'd say hey to everyone. Currently prepping a Yorkshire Perrinoceros, so it's an ammonite species, marked by these lovely little nodes on the outside that you can see here, and this is the way you can tell them from another species of ammonite. So For example, this one here, which is a Dactyliosauris. It doesn't have the same nodes, although the shell and these ribs look very similar. It's the presence of these bumps that makes a difference. The prep itself, it takes a long time, so I do understand if people don't want to sit and watch me trying to prep it the whole time. It's not a problem, I don't feel upset with that. I'm going to be prepping anyway, so I always think it's fun just to chuck up the stream and people can join and watch if they want. If you've got any questions, feel free to chuck them in the chat. I will try and respond to them as I do. If you hear little clip cloppies in the background, my dog is currently walking around clip clopping. So I'm going to get back to prep, and if you have any questions or comments, please do chuck them in chat, and I will keep reading them as I go. Apologies, dog is now begging to go out. I will be right back. But also, I appreciate dog tax is required for such things, but she's begging to go out, so I will be right back. So I'm going to let her wander around out in the garden for a little bit. I'm going to keep prepping. You will understand why I keep muting myself, so why all of a sudden I'm not talking to anyone when I stick on this. The volume of this Dremel is quite loud. So what you will hear is just the Dremel oscillating back and forth, and it makes a lot of noise. This is currently also inside of a box with a glass panel, so just to show you what I've got a box with armholes in it, which I'm currently working through, cables coming in through the back through little slitted openings to try and reduce the amount of dust escaping. As you can see, things are planned to prep, things I've been working on prepping over there. But the volume of this thing, even in a contained box, is quite loud, so let me give you a demo. And that's the volume of it through a box. So it is quite loud, which is why I'm about to mute myself again. So if you have questions, I will just come and go and keep talking to you guys. But for the most of the time, I'm going to be muted just because of this noise. Hey Matt, yeah, I don't have an extractor fan at the minute. It tends to be that the openings at the back are blocked by either the special filter through which the cables are passing, or the openings where my arms are blocked by my arms. So the dust is maintained within the box for the most part. It is not ideal, and there will be an extractor at some point, but it's just where I'm at the state that I currently cannot put a proper extractor with it. The goal will be, so I was showing off, there's some holes, there's another spare hole at the minute that's fully blocked back there. That hole there will be where the extractor is going to come through. So then I will have extraction on this box as well. At the minute the box will just stay closed for some length of time after I finished using it, let the dust settle out, and as you can probably see on stuff that is in the box, there's a nice fine layer of dust, so it is settling out in the box, but it's not ideal for health reasons. If you are going to be doing this for long periods of time, it is very much recommended to get a good extractor or a mask if you're planning to work on it, just to prevent yourself inhaling any of the dust. And the dust is pretty nasty, or can be pretty nasty. The iron pyrite is full of sulfur, and also if you get it in your lungs, it can be a long-term health hazard. So yeah, it is something to be aware of, and if you are planning to do it for long periods of time, I mean, I only do this maybe a couple hours a day at most, and only on a very small things, as you can tell with the fact that I'm only working with a Dremel. So my amount of dust is fairly limited, but for people who are doing it full-time or long-time, it is very much a requirement to either have a mask or have a really good filter, or ideally both. Or sorry, I say filter, a mask or an extractor, or both. Both is the best solution. So slowly getting there. This did have a cap on the top of it that basically covered this middle section, not quite as large as this side, but the cap did cover this. So what I've been working on is trying to just get around on it, get down to effectively the shell layer all the way around, and so you can see, hopefully, if it's going to focus, let's get the light back, there we go. So this shell in here is starting to be exposed. That's the edge of this outermost whorl. I know from what we could see on the beach that this edge of the whorl continues around, so it's still there, missing a chunk here. What it will do then is spiral inwards, but because it's a Perrinoceros and it has all these extra bumps on it, it's not going to prep probably as well as the DACs do. The DACs are always tricky anyway because you've got lots of fine ribs. These have got the fine ribs plus the bumps, so I've got very used to trying to prep DACs. This will be a new experience as I go inwards, trying to avoid taking out any of these extra bumps that the Perrinoceros species has. But my goal for the next little bit, I'm just going to be working through this remaining cap and working down towards the middle. And what I will do is hollow out the center. I say hollow out, but not all the way, but to make a sort of a valley in the middle, a little hole in the middle. It's just above the layer of the shell. And then I'll switch from this, which is a fairly coarse tip. This is a little chisel tip. Great for bulk removal of soft rock. I know you can't particularly see that, but you just have to trust me. If you go on the Zoic website, you can find the chisel tips. And so it's a little chisel tip rather than a little spike. And when I've got down to the ammonite layer, or close to the ammonite layer all the way around, I'll switch back to a different tip, which is a finer tip, which hopefully will be better at removing the matrix when it's just around the ammonite. But as I've said a few times to people, the reason I go quiet for large periods of time during this is A, I'm concentrating, but B, the noise on the Dremel, if you've never used one, is incredibly loud here. I'll give you an example. And you can probably all hear that over the top of it. That's actually still trapped within inside a box that's pretty much sealed, and you can still hear it making that much noise. So I go quiet in between. I will answer questions if you have any. But I'm also still learning with these species of ammonites and the Dremel. So I will keep prepping. If you've got any questions, I'll try and answer them. But I'm going to go quiet now. So thanks. So for those just joining, welcome. Busy prepping this Paranoceros. It's going slowly. It's the joys of the Dremel. It's always very slow on Yorkshire material because it's quite hard. But we're getting down to the ammonite on the inner ring. So this bit here, we've still got a little bit more to go to get down to it. So there's still another few centimeters to go. Well, I say a few centimeters, not that much, half a centimeter on this, the biggest ridge. And then we should just be able to follow it around. There'll be some tidying up to do. So this here is all matrix on the outer edges and on here as well. So I'll switch to the finer tip for that. But at the minute it's just to clear this up, just so I can see what I'm doing. The other downside of not having it extracted, which Matthew asked about earlier, is that the dust on a Dremel, it gets good build-up because it doesn't have an air push that comes out of it like all of the pneumatic ones do. The air scribes, they have a little jet of air that comes out of the tip and it pushes away the dust, so that does help with the preparation. Sadly, Dremels don't have it. So the dust gets a bit excessive at times, but at the same time it does mean that I'm not blowing the fine dust everywhere, so it's a bit of a trade-off. Just been working a bit more on this, getting down to the layer. So just to give you an idea of, ammonite is here, but yet to be shown up on this side. The difference in that thickness, we're looking at mils, fraction of mils. So this is where it gets a bit more tricky, and part of what I'll just be going a bit slower with. If anyone wants to know how you don't hit the ammonite with the prep tools, the big challenge is just to let the machine do the work. For the most part, fossils, ammonites, whatever fossils they happen to be, tend to preserve in such a way that there's a gap between the actual fossil and the rock around them. So if you are letting the machine do the work, going very slowly, letting it just push away, what will happen is the rock will pop away from the fossil. If you get a bit aggressive, if you're pushing too hard and not letting the machine do the pushing for you, what you will do is just push straight through and into the fossil itself. I will do it almost certainly at some point. It is a lot easier to do this on certain species and certain fossils and certain rocks. With a Dremel, it's always a little harder because the power it puts out is a lot less. So sometimes tough rocks, you put a little bit more force into them, therefore you end up going through the rock and into the fossil if you're not careful. So it's just something to be aware of as my dog barks away in the background. I'm just going to go check on her and I will be back in a second. Right, so I'm going to get back to it. I'd like to get probably another mil or two off all of this edge here. I think I'm pretty close to fossil on this corner over here, and then I'd like to clear out the middle a bit more. I do appreciate that the light is not always great in the box at the minute. That should hopefully be getting an update early next week with a new webcam coming, and hopefully can adjust for the fact I'm missing a bit of lighting on the side of the camera this way, which is why the glare always comes from the top of the screen. But the top of the screen lighting does make it easier for me to see shadows and things to help prep the fossil. So it's a bit of a balancing act. But if you do have questions, give us a shout. So getting pretty close, and also I'm realizing every time I press the button I say so you'll have to bear with me with my English and also with my fossil prep. At the minute, getting down pretty close to the ammonite all the way around. I don't know how well you'll see it, but down here we've got the first bits of the middle, or some of the middle whorl starting to come up, and I've got some more whorl showing up over here. So at that point I'm going to change off the chisel tip. It's a bit brutal, a bit blunt, and may well go through things a lot easier. So what I will do instead is rotate to the tip that I started off when I was trying to prep the deck earlier today. I will then see if we can do a better job with this one of taking this matrix off and exposing hopefully quite a nice ammonite. He says so once more. What I'm going to be doing then is swapping to the tip. There's multiple tips that Zoic have. They've got a shorter pointed tip, a long tip one like this, and then they've got the chisel tip. The short one is good for clearing matrix, kind of just like I've been doing with the chisel tip. It's great for matrix blunt removal. If you're just trying to get rid of it, that's normally the tip you to use. If you're trying to do fine detail, the long tip has more control. It's also, if you keep it in good shape, a sharper tip, and that makes it better for trying to remove this matrix. However, a lot of the Yorkshire material, as I've said a few times, is filled with pyrite. The pyrite makes the rock incredibly hard, and so what you can do, even though these tips are tungsten carbide, they do eventually blunt. So it's just worth remembering that when you're using the tips, to try and not use your really good tips on lots of material extraction, because you'll blunt them. And so keep your fine tip or your sharp tips for your fine detail. Right, back to it. And I talked about it earlier, no matter how tight you put some of these in, these screws have a habit of unscrewing. And so what you can end up with is what just happened there, is this thing, this tip pops out, even if you've tightened this as tight as you can go. So just be aware of that if you're doing fossil prep with any of the tips on the Dremmel 290. Is even though like I'm pulling on that with a lot of force, and you can see the entire head moving in and out as it does. This screw holding it all in sometimes goes loose as part of the vibrations, knock it loose. So do just be aware of that. Sorry, minor technical issues I can see going on here as my camera is not stuck to my my box lid, but is held in place, and unfortunately the thing holding it in place is sliding around, which then means the whole camera setup is sliding around, which is not ideal. I'm okay with it being at the bottom of the box, but I know for you guys it makes the viewing less ideal because you get more glare as I move the ammonite up that way more. So we're at the stage of the prep where it's a combination of goes really fast, but at the same time is very slow. So you may not see a lot happen for a long period of time, but when things happen, basically things will probably popping right off the ammonite. So there's ammonite shell here now, and quite a big amount. There's bits of it coming through all the way across here. So do stick around. I'm hoping in the next 20 minutes or so, this will be down pretty close to ammonite all the way around, and if not, ammonite showing all the way around with just a tidy up to do. It might take a little longer than that, but that's where we're at. It's just ammonite starting to come through this matrix on this, so what will be the outer whorl. I'm going to call this the second inner whorl and the third one. So we're getting there. It just takes a bit of time. So I think now even you guys are able to see that I'm not just making it up about the ammonite shell coming through here and also across its edges here. I'm tidying it up and just trying to remember which side's the big side. So mouth border, as I'm going to call it here, so this is where the animal would live on this side. It then shrinks from left to right across the screen, so the bits that are going to be nearest the top are always going to be on the left side, and the bits on the right are going to be always slightly deeper than the equivalent whorl on the other side. So it's just good to try and remember that as I'm prepping, that when I start seeing matrix at this height on this side, that sorry, if I see ammonite on this side underneath the matrix, that the matrix here is going to need to be removed slightly more on the right side than it is on the left, because the left is the bigger side. So that just is something I'm trying to remember as I'm going, just to try and help figure out how deep I need to be and whether I'm going to be very close to the material. Hi Joe, that's very much the same question that Matthew asked earlier. Two ways that I'm managing dust. One is suffering it. The second is all of this is currently in a box that's sealed. The only openings at the minute where my hands are, and the other one there where my other hand is. So the box itself is closed. It keeps the dust in, same as the fossils. It's also part of the reason I have gloves on, partly vibration, partly to help reduce the amount of dust that's coming out on my hands. So the gloves stay in the box, except for when I'm just touching technical equipment. It is not ideal. I am restricted because of where I live at the minute, that I don't have a proper prep, shall we say, cabin, a room that I can dedicate just to prep. The alternative solution that probably be better, and what I have plans for in the box back there, is another opening that's currently blocked. That will have an extraction unit going into it to try and A, reduce dust, and B, well, that's the main one, is to get rid of dust. It will just make my life a lot simpler. But at the minute, just because I've got a box, I am able to just kind of let it all settle out in the box. So you might have noticed the large quantity of dust on various things like the lighting unit that's currently set up at the back. That's just the dust settling out, so it's not escaping into the world. But if you are going to be doing this for many, many hours, I mean, I've currently been streaming for, what are we at? An hour and a half. So, I mean, I haven't prepped that much. I've done a little tiny bit on this deck, which I was hoping would have a middle, which didn't have a middle, so I stopped that. And otherwise, it's just been this Perinoceros. So I am not producing a huge quantity of dust, not compared to some of the high-powered air scribes, which will churn through matrix, and you can prep. Say this fossil has taken me about an hour to get to this point. With an air scribe, I'd expect that to take sort of 20-30 minutes. So I just don't produce as much as some of the high pressure systems. And the other thing that's better or worse, depending on how you want to look at it, is the Dremmel. The Dremmel is just an electric oscillation. Basically, it drives forward and backwards with the tip. It does not have an air jet that comes out like the air scribes do. The air scribes produce that, basically the release of air out the front. And so I'm not aerosolizing the dust in quite the same way. I know aerosolizing is the wrong term, but you hopefully can understand what I mean. I'm not basically jetting air into a dust pile and then spraying that dust everywhere. So it's kind of a two-factor thing. One is I don't generate as much. Two, I don't make it all go up because I don't have a little dust of air. And also I'm just trying to be super careful in this box about it. It is not perfect, but that is how I'm doing it at the minute. If you are going to be doing prep for long periods of time with high-powered tools, or particularly silica-based rocks, it would be really, really important to get a proper extractor and a mask, ideally, so you don't breathe in any of the dust and also don't scatter the dust everywhere. Thanks for asking. if you all just give me 1 second just to try and see if I can sort out the fact that my camera keeps sliding. That will then make my life a lot easier for showing you what's going on, especially now as big chunks of matrix popping off. You start exposing actual quantities of shell, so you can see I've just knocked a little bit off there, but I just realized you didn't see any of that. So let me just try and sort my cam out, and I will be back in a second. Cool. Short-term fix. As I said, I should have a new camera fairly soon, hopefully in the next 2 days, which I can then get properly set up on this. And that'll be a higher res one as well, and hopefully better at dealing with the fact that I've got a bit of glare and light difference in the box. So hopefully that'll be better. But again, as Joe has pointed out with the dust, this is the counter side, is I then struggle to see things, and then to see things I have to then generate this dust. As you can see, it all blowing over my left hand. But at the same time, I have to get rid of some of it because I just can't see what I'm doing otherwise. So it's a bit of a pain. But getting there, it looks to be pretty good shape. So now, hopefully, you all can see. I know the camera's not as focused as it could be, because of course it doesn't want to. There we go. So we've got outer edge still with some matrix on this side. We've got the next inner whorl with matrix on here, but you can at least see the edge as it comes up and around. So I've got it defined there. And then that continues into this section, which is pretty well exposed. And then we can see there's another section in between. So my goal at the minute is just to try and get this linked up and then continue this around. I'll come back and then tidy these bits up if I think they're going to be important, because sometimes some of these outer edges here, if you don't tidy them up earlier, it makes then exposing the next layer in a bit more challenging. So I try to, where possible, do outer layer completely, but as you see up here, I haven't done that, and it's made this bit a bit more tricky. So I'll come back and do this a little bit later. I'd like to show you guys the whole thing if possible, and then I'll come back and tidy. and I don't know if you all will have seen that. Probably not, looking at how the camera is focusing. Here we go. So I'm still going to keep going with this, but I already know the middle's gone. So here, when I was doing that, it popped and just there was nothing there, and I was following it around, and I actually saw earlier that this piece of shell here just isn't connected on either side. So I think there's a little bit of shell here, there's a bit of shell here. It looks like the middle unfortunately wasn't preserved. Not hugely surprising with this section here is a blowout. So this is one of the chambers, or multiple chambers, that's collapsed during fossilization. El Escher, I honestly don't know if anyone knows. The biggest challenge we have is ammonites as a group went extinct in the at the end of the Cretaceous, same time the dinosaurs did. And so we don't have any living ammonites. The closest we have are Nautilus, which live in the Pacific. There's a couple of species, if I remember correctly. And I'm not sure if anyone's ever looked at how old those species are based on the shape of the shell or the number of rings that they have. I don't know, is the honest answer. My guess is not, or at least not for ammonites, but they may well have been trying on nautiloids. But I don't know. I can have a look-see and let you know. You asked me the question, Elisha, and I'm now thinking about it. And I think there may also be another problem, because in some species of ammonite, they have morphs, a large one and a small one. And it's believed that they're sexes. So the females would be the larger ones because they'd need to be larger to be able to produce the eggs, as the case is in inverts. And the smaller one is believed to be the males. But again, I don't know how well people are able to even tell the difference between the different morphs in terms of small females versus males. So I think it's an extra level of confusion, but I'm not an invertebrate specialist, unfortunately, so I cannot give you a definitive answer, but that's now, it's going to bug me. I like it. Those are good questions. Keep sending them. I'm so excited for when I get a new webcam that might actually focus when you want it to. There we go. So getting there. What I've got is most of it exposed. That's there at least. I will have a little bit more of a tidy. I might see if I can actually carve in the shape of the ammonite, because this is for a friend who found it. But what I've got left to do at the minute is just tidy off these edges around here, tidy off the edges up here, and then see if I can remove some of the matrix on this outer edge. And I might just tidy off the edge down here as well, just to see if I can expose that a bit more to give it more of a 3D effect. But we're not very far off being what I'm going to call done with it. But it's quite a difference versus what it started as, which was maybe not quite as high as that, maybe half the height. But we're now down to the ammonite proper on the inside. But just a shame that the middle's gone. But unfortunately, the reality with far too many ammonites from the Yorkshire coast, at least the ones that I've seen. So we will do what we can just to keep tidying this up, and then I'll give it a good rinse, and then varnish it, and then show you what it looks like at that point. So I don't think it's perfect, at least as far as the prep work is going. It's also not perfectly preserved, but what I'm going to do is take this out of the box now, give it a full rinse just to see where we're at when all the dust is off it. But I might just about call that one done. I think there could be a bit more prep on the matrix on the outside. I'll speak to my friend and see what they would like me to try and do with what's left of it. Sadly that middle's just a heartbreak. It's just a shame that's not there. But it's collapsed like a lot of shells seem to do. There's definitely bits of it that were there, but the whole is not there. And it's just a shame I can't do anything about it. I can't fix it. But it was always a hint when we had an ammonite missing a chunk like this. And I don't believe that to be a predation thing. I think it's a preservation thing where that chamber's just collapsed under pressure of the rock. So let me give this a rinse. I'll be back in a short second. Yeah, so once you give it a good rinse and get the dust off, you can actually see a lot more of it. And so it's pyrite preserved, ammonite, so all of this shell is pyrite. But there's some bits of the original shell still on it, for example up here, which give it this sort of brown color. There we go. And then I'm just having to make some decisions about how much more I want to go with it. Just because the more you do, the more likely you are to make a mistake. But I'd say that's pretty close to done. It's just a shame, really, that there isn't more of it preserved in the middle. I would love to have seen that go all the way down to the center, but alas, it will not. I've still got a few people watching, so I will actually keep going. So this is Perinoceros. I tried the deck earlier. The deck was equally empty in the middle. So there was no middle on this deck that I picked up at Port Mulgrave. So what I might give a go, it's one of the fossils I found yesterday at Run... No, I wasn't at Runswick yesterday. I was playing with the seals. Where were the seals? Ravenscar, that's where it is, the other R. So I picked up a Hildoceros a couple of videos ago. I found a really massive one of these that I sent off to get professionally prepared. This one is smaller and less important, so I'm going to give this a go at prepping as well. I'm hoping this will actually go fairly quickly. The joys of Hildoceros species is that they don't have really big ribs. So when I talk about ribs on an ammonite, I'm going to grab one of the nicest ammonites I've prepped. A rib is these ridges, and this is what can help you identify the different species. So the Dactyloceros ones are fairly distinct with their ribbing. They just kind of all look exactly like this. There are some other similar ones that have very similar ribbing but are just wider. So dacks tend to be relatively small. This one's got multiple dacks in this block, which is why I've still got it here. You can get other ones. So for example, let me just show you the difference between. So there's one dac, fairly narrow. This is another one that I think is a dac, but has potential to be a different species just because of how big it is with a similar ribbing. But when I talk about ribbing on a Hildoceros, you can probably see this one's a bit water worn, but there isn't really the same ridges, and that actually makes them far easier to prepare because the matrix kind of just pops off the shell, in theory. I know that this has a middle, It's broken. The chambers inside are filled with calcite. That's what this white is. But I'm hoping that this top half at least will be mostly there. So I'm going to just start prepping this. This will actually be potentially quite dull for the first little bit, and I do understand that. But now is a good time to be pinging questions into chat if you have any, or want to make it more interesting. If you got any paleo questions, whether it be about what I'm doing now or about anything to do with dinosaurs, I'll try and answer them as well. So chuck them in there, and I'll just be prepping as I go. Oh, that's good to know, Mike. Thanks for the hint. Yeah, it's going to be one of the biggest pains that I've had and biggest complaints I've had is this screw coming loose during the vibrations. But I mean, the amount that I keep changing the tip, as I've only got a single Dremel. I know a few people who have multiple Dremels and just alternate between those. But because I keep wanting to unscrew that, I don't want to lock it too much. So it's a good hint. I'll have a look into it. Thanks, Mike. Cool, Mike. Thanks a lot. That's really useful to know, actually. I have to say, still learning. I've only been doing the prep properly for the last sort of 3 months, so I do really appreciate any hints and tips like that. That's really cool. Thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, the reason that I have to do more, Mike, is the rocks in Yorkshire are bloody hard. Excuse the language, but they're incredibly hard. I can't get things out if I don't use anything that's got a bit of a push to it. Nearly everyone up here is using air scribes, which are higher powered versions of what I'm using now. That are based on air. And that are driven by air rather than a little electric motor inside the engraver. It's just they're so damn hard that you kind of need them. Either that or you hit them with a hammer, and if you hit them with a hammer, then you're kind of down to the luck of the world whether or not you split your fossil down the middle or you split your fossil as you want. So yeah, we have to use some tools here in Yorkshire. But what I can say is there are so many ammonites on the coast. It doesn't really matter if you mess a few up. I pick up a few pocket fossils all the time, so something like that, for example, or even another one like that you can see I've just been practicing with, and it's not the end of the world if you mess them up. And as you get more comfortable, more confident, you can then start doing work on ammonites that you actually really want to put into your collections, or whatever fossils you might be. In Yorkshire, we've got several people who distribute West Kentucky, yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, it's a lot of luck of the draw. I imagine if you've got lots and lots of ammonites or fossils of any description that you've got in your area, pick up a few of the really scrappy bits and pieces, and if you want to learn to try it, I can recommend the Dremmel. It's only like $30, maybe a little bit more, I imagine, for you. It's like £29 in England. So it's really easy to get. The tips come from Zoic, although I've got a couple more that I bought on eBay, which aren't as good but do a decent job. And the Zoic ones, I think, again, are another like £5 or £6, so probably $7-8 for each of the tips, and they last pretty well. And yeah, if you've got bits and pieces that you can pick up and just practice on before you get to anything that you're really, really excited for, that would be my suggestion. Being in England, know the English people, and quite a few of them actually sell what I'm going to consider scrap ammonites, but they may not even be scrap. They're just ones that you can buy and practice and play with. So it's my best suggestion when it comes to this is have a go. The worst that happens is you break a few crappy ammonites, and the best that happens is you become more comfortable and can actually start prepping some of those fossils that you really want to see. Your alternative option is, if you don't have any trust in your abilities, do what I'm doing with my ichthyosaur spine that I found last week, and my really nice version of this ammonite species, the Hildoceras. I sent them to a professional, someone who's got a lot more skill and experience and better tools. And so that would be my best suggestion, is if you've got someone local to you that's got the tools, and you can afford to, send it to them, because they'll do a far better job than even I can. I am very much a professionally trained paleontologist in terms of academia, but I am not a professional preparator, and there's a lot to learn. And as you said, there's a lot of concern and risk with some of these specimens, and the really nice ones in my collection go to professionals to get prepped. It's nice that you've got a good selection. Crinoids, horn corals, yeah. I mean, the crinoids, if you get plates of them, they're some of the most beautiful fossils, as far as I'm concerned still. We've got really beautiful ones down in Dorset. Not so much in Yorkshire, actually. They're quite rare in Yorkshire, even though they're very similar rocks. But down in Yorkshire, you get... down in Dorset and Devon, you get some beautiful plates of them. Absolutely beautiful. And I've got a few horn corals, but my horn corals are actually much older. They're Carboniferous. So the rock's prepping pretty well actually at the minute. As I thought was likely to happen, it comes away from the ammonite underneath this Hildoceras really easily, so already got most of that corner away. This bit in the middle will take a bit of time to get all of this down. This is when I really wish I had a proper air scribe, because the power on those just means that this would disappear in a heartbeat, but it's going to take a little bit of time, so bear with me as I go, but hopefully it should be quite a good shape looking at it, and it's prepping pretty nicely, so I'm hoping there will be quite a bit to show for it, but I just need to feed the dog, so I will be back in a second. Oh, and I meant to say, if you got any questions about anything paleo related, I can try and answer it. No guarantees I can, but I can try. So anytime during the chat or in the chat, chuck in your questions and I'll try and answer things if you've got any questions. If you've got suggestions like Mike also had for how better to do my preparation, I take that advice too. All of it is really appreciated, and thanks everyone for showing up. I'm assuming this is all of the Americans joining in now, so thanks for all being here. Sorry, just taking a quick break from my shoulders and my hands because the vibration's not great for your hands, so that's part of the reason I wear gloves as well, to try and take a little bit of the vibration off my hands. I am going to keep working on this one for probably another 20 or so minutes. I probably won't finish it today though, so my hope is that tomorrow I will be back at probably the same sort of time as I was, about 2 p.m. my local time, to pick this one up and see if I can take it to completion. But thanks everyone for being here so far, and please do keep popping any questions or comments in chat. I keep reading them, and it's really nice to have some people to actually chat to whilst I'm doing the prep, rather than just having the little music in the background. So thanks for all of that. Yeah, I agree with you, Joe. Even as the person doing it, it's really quite nice, and there's something very satisfying about doing the prep, where you get to get this fossil that's never been seen by anyone out of its rock, and also a little bit of a surprise to find out what it actually looks like inside. Sadly today, the two that we've done so far, the middles weren't there, so that's typical, eh? But no, I really enjoy this bit of it. I find it a bit cathartic. I just enjoy it because I can zone out normally, just listen to the music. I know it's nothing really exciting, the music, sorry for everyone who's wanting something more, but I just really enjoy just the mellowness of it, and just being able to focus on one thing, and just nothing else in the world matters at that point. It's just that one little bit. So yeah, I'm excited for this one. I think this one could be quite decent, and a good intro to people who may not know what the ammonites around England look like, to then show this one off in preparation for when I get my beautiful one that I found. It was in one of my YouTube videos, I think 2 videos ago, Port Mulgrave Part 2, which was a 6-inch one of these. So even as wide as you can see on the screen at the minute. So it'll be an absolute stunner when it comes back. But it'll be a good intro for everyone. Right, I'm sorry for those who have just joined, and for those of you who are hoping to see me finish this one. I've been going for 3 hours now, and my eyes are starting to go and my head is starting to hurt from this. I do appreciate so many of you being here. I assume Mam Lambo sent you, so I appreciate you all being here. I am going to pick this Ammonite back up tomorrow, 2 p.m. my British time. If you're not sure what time that is your local, do just double check on the internet, plenty of places to find it. But I'd like to finish this one. If you want to see me find this one was in the video that released as well at lunchtime today, my time as well. So it's my most recent actual video, was me finding this. It was sat just like that. So it's quite nice to be working on this one. Tomorrow we'll get this finished for sure. And I do want to just say thank you again for everyone to being here. It's nice to have an audience, nice to have some people to chat to throughout it. I have to do the stereotypical YouTuber thing and say, if you enjoyed what you've seen, please hit the like button. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please do. I will try and organize streams so that people can keep track of what's going on. I'm hoping to get another fossil hunt next week as well, so that should be another video as well. But do let me know if there's anything you want to see. I'm going to do some educational ones on how fossils form, and a bit more about the Yorkshire locations out in fossil hunting as well. So do feel free to just give me any suggestions or any things that you really know about, and I'm more than happy to try and make some videos to try and explain my passion to all of you, because I absolutely love fossils. Made it my living for a long time, and I'm now getting to show it all via YouTube. So do let me know what you're interested in, and I'm happy to try and share my interest with all of you. So thank you once again everyone for showing up. I do appreciate it, and I will catch all of you hopefully tomorrow.